Hundreds of innocent human colonists lay butchered, their blood staining an alien world red. But humanity did not retaliate, and the Iconians were confused. They would soon learn the chilling reason humans now avoid war at all costs. Philip Hill's boots hit the landing pad with a heavy thud. The seasoned human diplomat had arrived on the Iconian homeworld for a crucial meeting with their High Council. But as his old friend Sirius approached, Philip could tell something was wrong. The Iconian looked tense, his face etched with worry. "The meeting has been postponed," Sirius said grimly. "A rogue faction of our people launched an attack on your colony. Hundreds of your civilians were killed. Our government claims no responsibility, but tensions are high. Your people cry for war." Philip's jaw clenched. He had seen this before, the drums of war beating in the chests of those who had never experienced its true horror. "It's not that simple," he said as they walked. "We humans have learned to avoid war at all costs. It's a long story, one that began over a century ago." As they entered the council chambers, all eyes turned to Philip. He knew what he had to say next could determine the fate of both their peoples. If he failed to make the Iconians understand, millions more could die. The future of humanity hung in the balance. "To understand why we hesitate," Philip began, "you must first understand our history, the darkest chapter of mankind, and the hard lessons we learned from it. Listen well, my friends, for this story may be the only thing that can prevent another war." As Philip spoke, a hush fell over the room. Everyone leaned forward, hanging on his every word. They knew that the secrets of humanity's past could hold the key to their future. A future without war, without bloodshed. But achieving it would be no easy task. Philip takes a breath, letting the weight of his words linger in the air. The Iconian chamber is as silent as the void of space. Every eye is fixed on the human diplomat. They know the fate of worlds hangs on this tale. In the year 2137, humanity took its first shaky steps onto the galactic stage. We had achieved faster-than-light travel, spread to a handful of planets. Colonies rose on once barren worlds. We thought ourselves invincible, with our mighty fleets and advanced weapons. How naive we were. Philip's voice is heavy with memory. The galactic war erupted like a supernova. Suddenly, we faced alien armies with technology we couldn't even comprehend, weapons that sliced through shields like paper, tactics that made a mockery of our battle plans. We were children, playing at war. His eyes take on a haunted cast. Our colonies burned. Millions died in days, entire cities reduced to ash. Our fleets, the pride of Earth, were shattered in every battle. We threw everything we had at the enemy, but it was never enough. Philip's fist clenches. Then as defeat loomed, our leaders grew desperate. They unleashed horrors we'd sworn never to touch, weapons that poisoned entire worlds, left them radioactive wastelands, plagues that liquefied populations, bombs that ripped holes in reality itself. He describes planets scoured of life, species teetering on the knife's edge of extinction. The very laws of physics warped and twisted, a galaxy in ruins. The war ended, but there were no victors. Only broken remnants of once proud civilizations crawling from the rubble. We had won, but at what cost? Humanity stared into the abyss, saw what our aggression had wrought. The billions dead, the scars we'd carved across the stars, and in that moment we knew. Philip trails off, his eyes distant. Sirius breaks the silence, his voice a hoarse whisper. Knew what? Philip meets his gaze, a fire burning behind his eyes. That we had to change. That war could no longer be our way. We had to find a better path, or perish in the ashes of our own destruction. It was the only way forward. He leans back in his seat, the weight of a century pressing down on him. But how do you rebuild a society from the ground up? How do you rewrite the very essence of what it means to be human? It was a question we had to answer. Our survival depended on it. Philip's voice grew heavy as he spoke, weighed down by the memories of those dark days after the war. The Iconian council chamber was utterly still, all eyes fixed on the human diplomat as he recounted humanity's darkest hour. We were broken, Philip said, his gaze distant. Our cities lay in ruins, our people scattered and starving. The once mighty fleets that had carried us to the stars were nothing more than drifting wreckage. And the cost in lives, he trailed off, shaking his head. Billions dead on all sides. It seemed impossible that we could ever rise from such devastation. He paused, letting the silence linger for a moment before continuing. But even in our darkest hour there were those who refused to give up hope. Not the generals and politicians who had led us into the war, but the thinkers, the dreamers, the ones who still believed in a better future. Philip's eyes took on a faraway look as he recalled those early days of the Unity Council. They came from all walks of life, from every corner of our battered world. Scientists, philosophers, artists, all united by a single vision, a future without war, where all species could live and prosper in harmony. He described how these visionaries had worked tirelessly, drafting a new framework for interstellar relations. The Treaty of Galactic Harmony was their masterpiece, Philip said, a note of pride creeping into his voice. A set of principles and protocols for resolving conflicts peacefully, for fostering cooperation and understanding between all sentient beings. But as Philip went on to explain, not everyone had been eager to embrace this new path. There was resistance, of course. Many saw the treaty as a sign of weakness, a surrender of our sovereignty and our right to defend ourselves. Even some of our own people opposed it, clinging to the old ways of nationalism and militarism. He recounted the long, difficult process of winning over the skeptics, both human and alien. The Unity Council never wavered, Philip said. They used every tool at their disposal. Diplomacy, trade agreements, cultural exchange programs. Slowly, painstakingly, they built bridges where once there had been only enmity and mistrust. As Philip spoke of those early successes, a palpable sense of wonder settled over the chamber. Sirius leaned forward in his seat, eyes shining with admiration. To think that your people could find the strength, the wisdom to choose such a path. He shook his head. It is truly remarkable. A wry smile tugged at the corner of Philip's mouth. Oh, it was far from a smooth process, he said. We had our share of setbacks, of crises that threatened to undo all the progress we'd made. But through it all, we held fast to our conviction that a better way was possible. As the councillors murmur amongst themselves, weighing the humans' words, Philip seizes the moment to steer the discussion back to the matter at hand. He rises from his seat, his voice somber yet resolute. The attack on our colony was a tragedy, a senseless act of aggression, he says, his gaze sweeping the room. But we stand now at a crossroads. We can choose to let this spark ignite the flames of another galactic war, or we can forge a different path, one of justice and cooperation. He outlines his proposal, a joint human-Iconian investigation, aimed at identifying and apprehending the perpetrators through legal and diplomatic channels. We must show that such acts will not be tolerated, Philip argues, his fist clenched. But we must also demonstrate our willingness to work together, to find common ground even in the face of adversity. The chamber erupts into a cacophony of voices, some councillors expressing doubt, arguing for a swift military response. But Sirius, his eyes still shining with the wisdom of Philip's tale, stands tall amid the chaos. The humans have shown us another way, he declares, his voice ringing with conviction. A path that eschews violence and vengeance, that embraces understanding and cooperation. We owe it to ourselves, to the memory of those lost in the galactic war, to walk this path. The debate rages on, voices rising and falling like the tides. But in the end, swayed by Sirius' passion and Philip's reason, the council agrees to the joint investigation. In the days that follow, human and Iconian alike work side by side, poring over evidence, chasing down leads. Diplomats negotiate, scientists analyze, law enforcement officials coordinate their efforts. It is a symphony of cooperation, a testament to the power of unity. And at the heart of it all, Philip and Sirius, two figures from worlds apart, yet bound by a shared vision. They journey between planets, meeting with leaders and laypeople, working tirelessly to weave a tapestry of trust and understanding. It is not an easy road. Mistrust and resentment lurk in every shadow, threatening to unravel their fragile progress. But Philip remains unwavering in his commitment, his belief in a better way. One evening, as they stand on the observation deck of an Iconian space station, gazing out at the infinite expanse of stars, Philip turns to his friend. "We cannot let the past define our future," he says, his voice soft yet filled with steel. "We must keep moving forward, keep believing that change is possible. It's the only way to break the cycle, to end the violence once and for all." Sirius nods, his own resolve hardening. Together they turn back to the stars, to the countless worlds spinning out there in the vast cosmos. Worlds they would unite, one step at a time. As Philip's story comes to a close, the council chamber is enveloped in a heavy silence. The weight of humanity's past, the sacrifices made and the hard lessons learned, hangs in the air like a palpable presence. But before anyone can speak, the doors to the chamber burst open. A group of Iconian investigators stride in, their faces grim. They approach the council, and their leader hands a data pad to Sirius. Philip watches as his friend's face goes slack with shock. Sirius looks up, his eyes meeting Philip's, and in that moment, the human knows that something is terribly wrong. "The attack on the colony," Sirius says, his voice shaking. "It wasn't Iconian extremists, it was—" He swallows hard, as if the words are painful to say. "It was humans, Philip. Human extremists who want to destroy the peace we've worked so hard to build." The council erupts into chaos. Iconian voices rise in anger and disbelief, some calling for immediate retribution against humanity. Philip stands in the middle of it all, his mind reeling, his heart sinking into his stomach. He raises his hands, calling for silence. When the noise dies down, he speaks, his voice heavy with grief and shame. "My friends," he says, "I come before you not as a representative of humanity, but as a man who has dedicated his life to the pursuit of peace. And yet, in that pursuit, I have been blind to the darkness that still lurks in the hearts of my own people." He takes a deep breath, steeling himself for what he must say next. "We have preached peace and understanding, but we have failed to confront the hatred and fear that still fester among us. We have allowed these cancers to grow, unchecked, and now the blood of innocence is on our hands." The chamber is silent now, every eye fixed on Philip. He meets their gazes unflinchingly, his shoulders squared beneath the weight of his responsibility. "I take full responsibility for this failure," he says, "and I will do whatever is necessary to make it right. These extremists will be found and brought to justice. The Unity Council will redouble its efforts to root out hatred and promote true understanding between our peoples. And I—" His voice catches, but he forces himself to continue. "I will step down from my role as diplomat. I am unworthy of this position, and unworthy of your trust." The Iconian councillors look at each other, murmuring amongst themselves. Some nod in agreement with Philip's words, while others still look angry and unconvinced. But Sirius stands, his eyes shining with a fierce light. He walks to Philip's side and places a hand on his shoulder. "No," he says firmly. "You have not failed, Philip. You have shown us the way to peace, even if the path is harder than we ever imagined. The failure would be giving up now, letting hatred and fear win. We must continue this work together." He turns to face the council, his voice ringing with conviction. "The humans have shown us that peace is possible, but also that it is a constant struggle. We cannot turn our backs on them now, when they need us most. We must stand together and fight this darkness wherever it rises." There is a long moment of silence. Then, slowly, one by one, the councillors begin to nod. They stand, joining Sirius and Philip in a show of unity. And so it is decided. The alliance between humanity and Iconians will continue, but with a renewed commitment to rooting out extremism and promoting peace. The Unity Council will lead this charge, working tirelessly to build bridges and heal the wounds of the past. As for Philip, he will return to Earth, his heart heavy but his resolve unshaken. He knows that the road ahead will be long and filled with challenges. The dream of lasting peace has been shaken to its core. But as he looks around at the faces of his Iconian friends, at the determination in their eyes, he knows that the dream is not dead. It lives on in the hearts of all those who refuse to surrender to darkness, who continue to hope and work for a better tomorrow. The story comes to a close, but the struggle continues. And though the future is uncertain, one thing is clear. The legacy of Philip and Sirius, and all those who have fought for peace, will endure. Their example will light the way for generations to come, a beacon of hope in a galaxy that desperately needs it. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.